Hi, I'm Jeffrey Van Wingen, family doctor from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Well, since the last video, we've had a lot of great ideas and a lot of people have weighed in. Awareness is increasing about the need to stay at home. Social distancing, people are doing it. And more people are under the stay-at-home orders in not only my country, but all over the world. Today I want to share with you some strategies to make your grocery shopping as airtight as possible and to not contract COVID-19. I'm not perfect and you're not perfect. Just do the best you can and arm yourself with knowledge and a plan when you go out grocery shopping. This may seem consuming or unnecessary, but in a time where our world is turned upside down on the front side of a pandemic, we're going to be accused of doing too much. But on the back side, we'll often be accused of not doing enough. Now, when we begin here, I want to share with you the data that we have from the National Institute of Health that in their laboratory they found that COVID-19 was detected on plastic and metal for up to 3 days and on cardboard for up to 1 day. Now, I want you to see this as a worst case scenario. Viral particles degrade with time. Today, as we deal with groceries, I want to use the analogy of imagining that there might be a bit of glitter on groceries as you bring them into your home. And our goal at the end of this is to not have any glitter in our house, on our hands, and especially not our face. And with that, knowing that that glitter dissolves with time and also dissolves with the use of things like sanitizer or soap, we're going to talk about how we can bring groceries into our home without any possibility, or the best possibility that we can, of not contracting COVID-19. And I want you to see your house as a fortress, and our goal is to not bring that in or to have it sustain in our house. So on that note, our house is not a sterile field, and we're not trying to make it. We're just mitigating the COVID-19. Now, consider this with the 3 days maximum, and consider leaving your non-perishable foods in a place where you can come back to them later, at a doorstop or in your garage or even your car. But the perishables that need to be refrigerated need to be brought in. But the dry goods and the cans, maybe we could leave those out and make this airtight. Now, for the foods that you need to bring in, we're going to deal with those today, and also some of the non-perishables, because you may need those sooner than the 3 days. And I want to consider dirty versus clean. This could be considered dirty, potentially contaminated with some of that glitter, and this could be considered clean. And at the end, we're going to get the wrappings out and wipe this down with sanitizer. Now, when it comes to sanitizer, I'm going to defer to the Centers for Disease Control. They've got a great website that's going to give you all the ideas about what you can use for sanitizer. And I also want to say, before we begin, that I don't want you to fear your food. This is not a foodborne illness, but the majority of COVID-19 is contracted out in the community when people gather together and when those respiratory droplets are shared. And it is conceivable that those respiratory droplets could land on things like plastic and metal or cardboard and be brought from our hands up to our face. So I don't want to discount the basics, but I want to make this as airtight as we can be. There's been a number of great ideas that I've seen, and for instance, the vegetables. We're going to talk about how we're going to deal with them. Perhaps you could bring them into the refrigerator and just leave them for that 1 day, considering that they are porous and they could just sit on an area in your refrigerator that you could come back to in a day or so. But we're also going to show about how you could wash them. Now, you'll see here that I have plastic bags, and plastic bags can be thrown away or recycled, but cloth bags, what I might recommend is that you let them sit outside your home or in an area off to the side for a day or so. Perhaps you could even launder them. But whatever you do with them, try not to leave them in the high use areas of your home after they've been to the grocery store. Now, the most important thing is to stay at home. Go out only if you must. Social distance at least 6 feet. And do the best you can with these tips to aggressively reduce your risk of contracting COVID-19 in this pandemic, the likes of which we've not seen in our lifetimes. For groceries, I think it's wise to use a delivery service if you can. Pay up front, avoid giving cash tips, and instruct the person delivering to leave the groceries at your door. And this is not only about you, but it's also about that delivery person that really is on the front lines. So here's some tips though, if you do need to go to the grocery store. Don't go unless you must. Send younger family members. Do absolutely all you can not to bring your kids who may be not as vigilant about prevention in the grocery store setting. Pay with plastic if you can. Get up to 2 weeks of groceries if you can, so that you'd minimize your need to go back to the grocery store. Before you go to the grocery store, make a plan. Make a list to decrease your time in the store. And while in the store, commit to buy. Don't read labels. If you pick something up, commit to buy that so that you're not putting your hands on things that are going to be lingering on the shelf. As far as masks, there was news just today that the Centers for Disease Control is considering recommending wearing masks when we go out. Decrease your tendency to touch your face. That's the most important thing that a mask can do. It's going to teach us to not be touching our face. And it can also decrease the risk that you'll give others the illness if you show up to the grocery store and are asymptomatic and yet you have COVID-19. And on that note, don't go to the store if you have any respiratory illness symptoms like cough, a fever, or shortness of breath. And when you're at the store, maintain social distancing. Practice not touching your face, and wash your hands if you can, or do bring sanitizer to sanitize your hands after you've dealt with getting your groceries. So let's deal with some of these groceries here. And I'm not going to sanitize this surface immediately before I deal with the groceries because it's my home, and I don't consider my home to be spreading COVID-19, but it's okay that the other microbiome is going to be existing on my home as it always does. I'm going to saturate a paper towel. In essence, I'm going to make this about what we would get with a disinfectant wipe. And as I do move back and forth on these groceries, I'm just getting a bit of hand sanitizer on that. And I'm not going to wash my hands before I deal with the dirty side, but I'm definitely going to wash my hands before I engage with the clean side here. And again, this is just doing the best you can. So with things that are encased in hardy plastic, it's reasonable to wipe them down. And again, we're trying to mitigate that worst case scenario here. Now, with bagged items, I could certainly wipe them down, but I could also use a technique to put these foods right into storage. And in doing so, I'm not having to worry about this packaging here. With canned goods, I think it's certainly reasonable to just give them a wipe down as I'm dealing with my groceries here. But with those perishables that I bring in, say for instance, take this chicken. I'm going to need to refrigerate this, and certainly I could lightly wipe down the outside. I could also leave it in my refrigerator and not have to deal with it later. But what I'm going to choose to do is open this up and put this right into this container here. Now chicken is sort of a special circumstance. Chicken can pass along salmonella, so I'm definitely going to wash my hands after I've dealt with the chicken. And while I'm doing that, I want to talk about sterile technique. Sterile technique is something that we use in the medical field to make sure that we don't give any illness to our patients as we perform things like surgery. And these techniques that I'm sharing with you today are kind of an adaptation of that sterile technique. And again, you're not going to be perfect as you do this, and perhaps my sterile technique isn't perfect either, but again, we're just doing the best you can. Now, as I deal with this frozen pizza, I don't want to deal with the cardboard here, but I know that inside this frozen food is going to be wrapped with plastic. And I'm just going to dump it onto the table and consider this clean, because no human hands have touched this for several days in all likelihood. And I want to address the freezer. And while we don't have any data to go on, other coronavirus species have been stable for extended periods of time in frozen situations. In fact, microbiologists will store viruses in the freezer. So I think in the interest of making this airtight, don't just put your frozen foods in the freezer assuming that you're safe. Now, I'm going to use the same technique with this box of cereal, knowing that the cereal is wrapped in plastic, and I'm just going to dump that out without touching the bag. And lastly, I've got some fruits and vegetables here. And we're going to deal with these over in the sink. Okay, so I'm going to drop my paper towel saturated with sanitizer on the counter there, and I'm just going to dump these vegetables in the water here. Now, I'm not so worried about these apples because they've been encased in plastic, but just to be thorough, I'm going to deal with them and give them a good wiping off. Same with the tomatoes here that I grabbed off the pile of tomatoes off the produce section. And I'm going to put my plastic here. Now, this is considered dirty. Now, what I'm going to do is just rinse this off with plenty of flowing water. And since the last video, I've had the opportunity to consult with some experts from Michigan State University, the Department of Microbiology and Food Science, and I just want to give a shout out to those folks. They've been invaluable through this process. And I'll stop for now and come back to these vegetables because you get the picture. I'm going to wipe off my handle, pick up my dirty bags, clean off this surface, and then return back to my groceries here. I hope these tips have been helpful. Just do the best you can. And I want to encourage you to love those that you're staying at home with a little bit more these days. And if you must venture out, love on your fellow people a little more with kindness and patience. These are difficult times, and I want to encourage you to be part of the solution.